Hello everyone. So good evening all. Today we have to do climate convention. Previous time what we were doing, I think we have started the climate conventions, right? Environmental policies and legislation we were doing. That is another topic. Environmental policies and legislation. We have done the previous classes, okay? All right. So in this, what we have discussed about various legislation which are required for the convention space. Legislation required for the environmental mitigation. So what kind of mitigation that you require? First of all, please understand that. What is advisable? What is advisable is that they will be giving out legislation. Now, these legislation can be your global, your international legislation, the better word is international, and national legislation. Right? And the both should be what? The both should be aligned. Aligned in sense, अगर दोनों ही sync में होंगे, then only there will be a better output. Otherwise, when two things are not in sync, what will happen? They will not have the expected or required result. So your national legislation should be also in accordance to the national legislation should be also in accordance with the international legislation, right? For example, we have got the COP. Now, what COP 30 is saying, all those objectives, all those agenda that have been decided in this COP. Similarly, a country has to implement all the provisions of it in the country. So this can be complete. This target could be achieved, right? Similarly, with respect to Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement, I hope that you personally know it because you must have also read in your GS. Paris Agreement is reducing the NDCs, nationally determined contribution. Who is producing nationally determined contribution? Even if you don't know, I will just repeat it in the class again because any which way you have to do this part. NDCs for nationally determined contributions. And this nationally determined contributions are given by, this is what has been the conclusion when in COP 21, when it happened in 2015, where in Paris. It is popularly known as Paris Agreement, wherein every country has to give their national determined contribution. Means how much they can fulfill in a 5-year period, right? And it keeps on updating every after 5 years. It is updated every after 5 years. So this is what has been decided. Now it was updated in 2002, and now recently they have to give the updated version in 2006. So for 2007 we have to give it right now. We'll discuss all of this. This is superficially only. I'm just explaining you why the conventions are required. Global conventions क्या है? Global conventions the way environmental conventions दो तरह के हैं आपकी basically your international legislation which has been given out that this should be achieved, your CO2 emission should be minimized, your methane emission should be minimized. This is what आपका internationally आपको बोल दिया गया है. उसके बाद national level पे आपको क्या बोला गया है that all this your initiatives, all this legislation which you are planning in your country should be aligned with the international legislation to achieve the targets, right? Okay. All right, so we have done what we have done in the previous class. I will just tell you so that one can see that how much we have covered. Stockholm Conference we started from. Then this we have completed, why it happened, why it took place. Then 1992 Earth Summit we have done. Then In our summit, we have discussed their work. This is also known as Rio prevention. And there are three sisters of Rio prevention. One is UNFCCC. Next is UNCPD. Another one is UNCCD. Then UNFCCC is also what it's a legally binding treaty. But not all its objectives, agendas are not legally binding, but yes, it's a legally binding treaty. Right? So, shall we start discussing about this UNFCCC? Right now, okay, right on. UNFCCC was adopted on May 9, 1992. UNFCCC was adopted on UNFCCC was adopted on 9th May 1992 and was open for signature at the United Nations Conference at the United Nations Conference. It was open for signatures at the United Nations Conference on environmental and development. Also known as Earth Summit. It is also known as Earth Summit. It is also known as okay, keep on writing. Thank you. It is also known as Earth Summit. Right. The UNFCCC entered into force on 21st March 1994. UNFCCC entered into force on 21st March 1994. Right on. Preventing dangerous human interference with the climate system. Preventing dangerous human interference with the climate system is the ultimate aim of UNFCCC. It's the ultimate aim of UNFCCC. Write down the objective. Objectivity. The convention's ultimate objective is the convention ultimate objective is to achieve stabilization of greenhouse gas. To achieve stabilization of greenhouse gas. To achieve stabilization of greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere at a level that would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference. That would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference. Right on next. UNFCCC does not have FCCC does not have who has been added up on your list. Okay, right on. UNFCCC does not have legally binding enforcement mechanism. UNFCCC does not have legally binding enforcement mechanism. Okay. So one thing I have to clear in this statement is when I say it does not have a legally binding enforcement mechanism, I want to say that because it is binding in nature. For example, some of the treaties of UNFCCC are binding in nature. For example, if I talk about the Paris Agreement, that is my one. Like, so when I'm saying some of the conventions are binding in nature, some of the treaties of the convention I apply. Some of the treaties of the convention, some of the treaties of the convention binding in nature. Some of the treaties of the convention are binding in nature. For example, your Paris Agreement. Right on next. UNFCCC and Rio Convention. UNFCCC and Rio Convention. Right now. UNFCCC and Rio Convention. Okay. The UNFCCC is a Rio Convention, comma, one of the two open for signature. UNFCCC is a Rio Convention, comma, one of the two open for signature at Rio Earth Summit. At Rio Earth Summit. The other two conventions are first UNCBD, which is United Nations Convention, United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. Your second is UNCCD. Second is UNCCD, right now. United Nations Convention to combat. United Nations Convention to combat desertification. To combat desertification. What is a key principle? What is a key principle of UNFCCC? Very important key principle of UNFCCC is common but differentiated responsibility. What do you mean by common but differentiated responsibility? It means that although we have taken up that we have to achieve a common thing. For example, there is a target which has to be completed by the whole world, right? But the point is all the members, world means parties or members, the members who have signed the document. Right? The moment the country signed the document, they become parties or members. The moment they have signed the document, then it becomes what? Common but differentiated responsibility. What do you mean by that? See, all the members who are going to be associated with the UNFCCC, it is not necessary that they must have the equal responsibility. Why? Reason being, because these countries are divided into developed and developed. Now, with respect to the developed countries, what they have to do, they have to definitely take extra responsibilities in terms of investments, while developing countries have less responsibilities. Reason being, because it is said that developed countries are what developed countries have more contribution in the greenhouse gas emission. And why it is said so that they have more contribution in the greenhouse emissions? Reason being because they have recklessly contributed, they have recklessly released a lot of greenhouse gas emissions during their industrial revolution, right? And at that point of time, there was no one to keep a check on them, because we never knew that greenhouse gas emission is also a thing. There is a certain kind of pollutant that has been released and how harmful it can be for the world, right? There is an increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature, and this is quite detrimental for all the activities and natural phenomena taking place on Earth. So we had no idea. The moment we got aware about that, then we realized, okay, the industrial revolution which happened, this is also one of the main key reasons of what has happened, because at that time we were not more concerned about the climate, we were more concerned about how much a country is earning, what is the revenue that we are withdrawing, whether we are drawing from the any sort of industry which has been set up, or which country is performing better than other. That was the only thing. But now when we have got aware about all these things, now developed countries are taking more onus on them. Similarly, there is a concept of, you will also understand, in COP27, what is COP27? COP is basically, the full form is Conference of Parties. Conference of Parties. It means parties means members. So the meeting is taking place every year. If you are keeping a check on that, so this meeting takes place every year. So COP27 had talked about the loss and damage fund. What do you understand by loss and damage? So it is like that this loss and damage was first finalized in the COP27, which took place in Egypt. And later on, there were further discussion which took place in COP28. COP28 took place in UAE, Dubai. So when this discussion was happening about loss and damage fund, it was differentiating between the countries, how the developed countries have actually promoted a lot what the greenhouse gas emission. Because of that, the country which is being impacted the most are the small island developing states. जो आपका islands हैं, all of these have been impacted the most. क्यों? देखिए, island में कोई भी country होगा, sea level rise होगा, because अगर climate का temperature बढ़ेगा, the climate temperature is increasing, so definitely glaciers will recede. Like recede का मतलब होता है melt करेंगे तो आपका water level increase होगा, जो आपकी SIDs हैं. SIDs की कुछ example है जैसे water. These are the country island states. ठीक है, all these will be impacted the most, while Indonesia, a lot of area of Indonesia is also facing that. When the sea level will rise, a lot of areas will get surrounded with the water, and then the vulnerability of submergence will definitely be increased, right? So these are some of the problems which they are catering to. So COP27 में भी इसकी बात हुई थी loss and damage fund. It is not new. It is not a very old concept. Initial days only we have talked about this developing in a developed states. Even today, also we are saying the damage that you have done, you have to pay for it, and that's what we call it as loss and damage fund. 27 में भी इसके बाद और 28 में भी इसके बाद हुई, and then 29 में we have increased this value from earlier these states. So what we are demanding, small island states are demanding at least $1 trillion. At least $1 trillion, but that is not accepted by the countries. Developed countries first agreed on $100 billion, and later on it was increased to $300 billion. This time was increased to $300 billion. Like they are not agreeing to $1 trillion, which is a quite a big number for the developed countries, right? So this is what has been discussed. अब लिखेंगे आगे common but I hope you have got the meaning of common but differentiated responsibility. I have explained it. This is the mean. This is written in the main charter of the UNFCCC. Right? It is written in the article of UNFCCC that common but differentiated. Common क्या हमारा goal, but हमारा responsibility क्या है? But differentiated responsibility. More of an idea which looks similar to equitable distribution. It just means that the one who is earning more should pay more taxes. Isn't it looking like that? The person who is earning more should pay more taxes. Right? But yes, definitely the key concept is different. The person who has contributed more should pay more investment. Should invest more. It's just like that. The country who has contributed more should invest. Okay. Next, right down. Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay, now coming to the next part, write down. Okay, so we'll quickly come on to the COPs. So how the different COPs have been important so far. Write down conferences. Write down COP1. COP1 took place in Bern. Write down COP1. COP1. Berlin, Germany. COP1. Berlin, Germany. Write down the key highlights. Write down the key highlights. COP1. Berlin, Germany. And write down the key highlights. Right down the key. Establishment of processes for binding commitments. Establishment of processes for binding commitments for developing countries. Establishment of processes for binding commitments for developing countries. Next, COP3. COP3 is very important. Write down. It's a Kyoto Protocol. COP3. Write down. It's a Kyoto Protocol. It took place in 1995 in Kyoto. Where it is in Japan. What did they talk about? Write down. Major provision of COP3 1995 became adoption of Kyoto Protocol. Adoption of Kyoto Protocol. Adoption of Kyoto Protocol, which entered into force in 2005. Next, write down. Kyoto Protocol adopted and includes. Kyoto Protocol adopted and Kyoto Protocol adopted and includes land use, land use change. Kyoto Protocol adopted and includes land use, land use change and forestry. Kyoto Protocol included adopted land use, land use change. It adopted land use, land use change and forestry as a sector of emissions. Write down more under Kyoto Protocol. Write down. It is the first international treaty. It is the first international treaty What is happening, Sonia? Are you going on and off? There's a problem in the portal. Write down. Kyoto Protocol. It is the first international treaty committing industrialized nation. It is the first. Please write down. It is the first international treaty. It is the first international treaty committing. It is the first international treaty committing industrialized nation to reduce greenhouse gases. Committing industrialized nation to reduce greenhouse gases. Reduce greenhouse gases. Next, looking the Kyoto Protocol was adopted on 11 December 1997. Write down. It identified 6 greenhouse gases. It identified, ma'am, I guess it's due to network issue, but everything is fine over here. I think at your end only there is some issue. Can you get it fixed? Okay, done. Right up. The protocol identified 6 greenhouse gases that needed to be reduced. First is carbon dioxide. It required to be reduced. पहला कौन सा था? Carbon dioxide. Second became methane, CH4. CH4. Third was nitrous oxide, N2O. Nitrous oxide, N2O. Then hydrofluorocarbon. Nitrous oxide, N2O. Fourth, hydrofluorocarbon. Write down. Ishan, there is some issue at your end too. Let me know. Then write down perfluorocarbon, which is PF6. Fifth, perfluorocarbon, which is PF6. Perfluorocarbon, which is PFCs. Okay, there's some issue. Write down this again. Write down perfluoro, then carbon. Perfluorocarbon, right? Then write down SF6. SF6, which is your sulfur hexafluoride. Sulfur hexafluoride. So, 3-4 things that you have to understand: carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbon, perfluorocarbon, and sulfur. Please understand, these are all your greenhouse gases. If you can remember, these are all your greenhouse gases, and it was written over there that you have to reduce the emissions, right? CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbon, your perfluorocarbon, and sulfur hexafluoride. These all are your greenhouse gases as well, which were required to be reduced. Now, what is the difference of Kyoto Protocol? Kyoto Protocol talked about the phased reduction. Phased reduction means कुछ अपने phases में हम reduce करेंगे आपकी gases को. So, in the first phase, this much has to be decreased. The second phase, this much has to be eliminated. So that is what they talked about. They talked in phases, right? So write down Kyoto Protocol had 2 phases. They talked about phase reduction. Kyoto Protocol talked about phase reduction. Write down. The first commitment period was 2008 to 2012. The first commitment period was 2008 to 2012. Madam, 37 industrialized countries, 37 industrialized countries, 37 industrialized countries and economies, 37 industrialized countries and economies in transition and European community committed to reduce GHG, which is your greenhouse gas. Next, देखिए, during the second commitment period, GHG emissions, just write down 5% in the first phase that they talked about reduction. The reduction has to be done only 5%. Okay. During the first commitment period, I'm again repeating, 2008 to 2012, 37 industrialized countries and economies in transition committed to reduce GHG emission to an average of 5%. Against 1990 levels. Next, looking at second point. During second commitment period, the second commitment period का लिखिए, parties committed to reduce GHG emissions at least 18% below 1990 levels. Okay. Come to the next part. We'll be discussing next important COP. Directly we'll come to the one of the most important COP, which is your COP21. Hence, it has been one of the important COP, one of the important conferences which took place in Paris in 2015. This is COP21. And what are the provisions of this COP? The Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty. Paris Agreement is a legally binding. It's a legally binding international treaty. It's a legally binding international treaty on climate change. Write down the key outcomes. What were the key outcomes of COP28? Important for the GAS also. Extremely important. Okay. Key outcomes. Paris Agreement. First, write down Paris Agreement. Heading down Paris Agreement. Write down the central outcome of COP21 was. The central outcome of COP21 was the adoption of Paris Agreement. The key outcome of the COP21 was Paris Agreement. First point, taking a long-term temperature goal. They aim for long-term temperature goal. They aim for long-term temperature goal. They aim for long-term temperature goal, which is mentioned in Article 2 of it. They aim for long-term temperature goal. And this has been mentioned where? In Article 2. Mention it, Article 2. Next लिखेंगे limit global warming to well below 2.6. Limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius. Limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial level, comma, with efforts to limit the increase. With efforts to limit the increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. हमें ग्लोबल वार्मिंग कितना रिड्यूस करना है? द ग्लोबल लिमिट ऑफ ग्लोबल वार्मिंग टू वेल बिलो 2 डिग्री सेल्सियस अबव प्री इंडस्ट्रियल लेवल, मतलब जो इंडस्ट्रियल लेवल्स, मतलब जो इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन से पहले था आपका, ठीक है, ग्लोबल वार्मिंग का जो लेवल था वो क्या है? इट हैज टू बी रिड्यूस्ड टू दैट लेवल एंड विद एफर्ट्स टू लिमिट द इंक्रीज, हमें लिमिट करना पड़ेगा उसका इंक्रीज अप टू 1.5 degrees Celsius. Write down. The first and extremely important initiative taken in Paris Agreement is nationally determined contribution. It's important and it has been also discussed in the recent COP30. We will discuss hota hi rahega till the time we will have UNFCCC, nationally determined contribution. First, understand what are these. So all the countries are given some targets to achieve, and these targets are taken by none other than countries itself. Right? Countries themselves, they take the target of achieving that what they know their capacity, they know their investments, they know everything about this. So who is better to decide that what I can achieve is only myself. So with respect to country also, the countries can only tell you that what they can achieve and how they can achieve. So it is given to the countries that this is how and till when they will be achieving all the initiative, all the targets that they are taking up. For example, in NDCs, India is taking up 45% reduce in carbon intensity, right? 50% of the generation of electricity through renewable resources. So all of this which they have taken with a target that up to this time. For example, 2025, I will be able to complete this much. The thing is that you have to understand when we are picking up the target, first it's legally binding, Paris Agreement legally binding, right? So one has to also appreciate the fact that the country, despite of, for example, especially with the developing countries, despite of the fact they are having a lot of challenges, more challenges than the developed countries. If we talk structurally, the developed countries are having more developing countries are having more challenges because they have to also take care of the basic amenities of the country because they are still developing. A lot of section of their community will be under below poverty line. A lot of areas won't be getting, a lot of population won't be getting the proper education. So despite of all these challenges, they have to take another thing which is called climate. This is the extra thing they have to take. So obviously the targets that a developing country can take with respect to the vis-a-vis developed countries. So targets the developing countries can take vis-a-vis developed countries, there is going to be a huge difference between them. Right? So that is what we have to understand. It's not about that one country is taking more and the country is taking more less. It is always about that how much one can perform. They know their resources, they know their capacity. Okay. So write down long-term, national determined contribution likhiye. Paris Agreement establishes binding commitments. Paris Agreement establishes binding commitments by all parties to prepare, communicate. Nationally determined contribution. National determined contribution establishes binding commitments by all parties to prepare, communicate and maintain. Prepare करना है, communicate करना है और prepare करना है. Prepare, communicate. To prepare, communicate and maintain. And maintain a NDC. And maintain a NDC. NDC will be updated every 5 years. Right now, NDC will be updated every 5 years. NDC आपको update करेंगे और 5 years के बाद updated every 5 years. We will be given 5 years to perform, and whether or not you have completed the target, you have to update it. Okay, every 5 years to enhance ambition. Next point, Article 6. Article 6. Right. Article 6 of Paris Agreement. Article 6 of Paris Agreement lays down the foundation for cooperative approaches among countries to achieve. They lay down the cooperative approaches among countries to achieve their nationally determined contribution to carbon reduction. Okay. Now, another important term in this, which has been discussed again for the first time, is a global stock take. Global stock. These सारे terms are all very well familiar if you have not done GS environment. So, Ishan, is it the first time that you are hearing all these terms? I think Soumya is definitely hearing all this term for the first time. What about you, Ishan? You also, so in this way, your GS is also getting revised. Congratulations. Okay. Now, I think write down global stock take. Establish a mechanism for global stock take every 5 years. What is global stock take? I talked about it. Establish a mechanism for global stock take every 5 years to assess collective progress towards agreement's long-term goal. Agreement's long-term goal. देखिए, global stock take एक basically metric है आपका, you can call it as a metric only, wherein you have to assess that how much targets have been achieved by individual country, and collectively then you will see whether we have achieved enough that we can complete a bigger target that we have thought for the long-term vision. For example, अगर आपको एक particular चीज complete करनी है for the long-term vision, definitely you have to do it in the steps, right? And we will be giving this much, like for the first 5 years, all the countries collectively will contribute this much, right? We have certain target, then next target, then another target for another year, another span of year, and then collectively we can do this much, right? But sometimes the country is falling short in their commitments. They have not been able to keep up with their commitments, and what will happen? This will eventually target the final target that we have taken for long term. So this is what a global stock take, wherein you are assessing every 5 years that how much you have to achieve, and the countries when they are not able to contribute what they have committed, then definitely they're falling short of the targets. So what will happen? It will contribute collectively in the final target. So this is called global stock take. Or global stock take आपका अभी भी complete नहीं हो पाया. Recently in the COP30 which the global stock take estimation was done. COP30 होता मतलब Conference of Parties 30. उसका नाम 30 क्यों? क्योंकि आपका COP1 से लेकर COP30 तक हो चुका है. Just for somebody who is not aware of this, COP का मतलब फिर से मैं बता रही हूँ Conference of Parties जहाँ पर members मिलते हैं. Meeting है ये. पहली meeting COP1, दूसरी meeting COP2, तीसरी meeting COP3. This is how we are divided. So recently COP30 हुआ था, that happened in Brazil. It happened in Brazil. इससे पहले हुआ था COP29. It happened in Baku, Azerbaijan. And the next COP which is going to take place, COP31, is going to take place in Turkey. Right? So all of these objectives are assessed, that how much we have completed. And so this time in COP30 we have estimated that how much we should have done. Global stock take estimation हुआ था, and we were falling short of our targets collectively, right? So this is what is global stock take. Now write down climate finance. This is also extremely important in Paris Agreement. They talked about another important thing which you call it as carbon finance. See, to achieve anything, you need to finance. You need to finance. You need to, even for to make any technology, you need an investment. You need the capital. So they also talked about climate finance. Developed countries reaffirm the goal of developed countries. कहाँ से idea आया? Right down. Developed countries reaffirm the goal of developed countries reaffirm the goal of developed countries reaffirm the goal of mobilizing $100 billion. Mobilizing $100 billion per year. Mobilizing $100 billion per year. They will mobilize how much? $100 billion per year by 2020 to support developing countries. By 2020 to support developing countries in mitigation and adaptation. In mitigation and adaptation. Next, sinks and reservoirs, which was mentioned in Article 5. Sinks and reservoirs. Which was mentioned in Article 5. Right now, sinks and reservoirs. Right now, the Paris Agreement also encourages parties to conserve and enhance. The Paris Agreement also encourages parties to conserve and enhance sinks and reservoirs of carbon sinks. Sinks का मतलब है यहाँ पे carbon sinks and reservoirs of greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases. There is another article wherein we have talked about exactly the same thing I was discussing, which was loss and damage. Loss and damage. We talked about it in Article 8. Right now, loss and damage, Article 8. लिखिए. Acknowledgement of Warsaw International Mechanism. Basically, देखिए, Warsaw is a place. कहाँ है Warsaw? Russia में. Warsaw Pact याद है किसी को वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री से? Warsaw Pact क्यों हुआ था? It happened because they wanted to retaliate to who? USA, right? Similarly, the lines on which NATO was established on the similar lines, Russia wanted to establish what? Warsaw, right? Warsaw Pact. Alright, so it took place in Warsaw, which loss and damage. So the time they have discussed for this was पहली बार zikr. So word I want to use there is पहली बार जब zikr हुआ था loss and damage for the first time. It happened in Warsaw. Warsaw में जब आपका COP हुआ था वो बहुत पहले हुआ था, not now. It happened very in the initial days of the formation of UNFCCC. बहुत जल्दी भी नहीं, but in the mid. And for the first time, they discussed the concept of loss and damage fund, and later on, it developed their the things were developed upon that particular thing, the particular topic, and they started talking about it. Finalized हुआ तो COP27 में जो अभी हमारा right? So लिखिए acknowledgement of the Warsaw International Mechanism, acknowledgement of the Warsaw International Mechanism, acknowledgement of the Warsaw International Mechanism for loss and damage, focusing on addressing the impacts of climate change that cannot be mitigated or adapted to. Okay. Okay. So there is another concept also. Okay, they also talk about net zero target. What is this net zero target? Net zero target. We talked about this. Net zero target for the second half of the century. That means after second half, 250 के बाद, 2050 के बाद, we will focus on net zero target. What is that net zero target? We will not talk about reduction. We will talk about whatever you have emitted, you have to compensate. You have to compensate in sense you have to also reduce the amount of the CO2 which is present. जितना भी आपने release किया है, similar way you have to absorb it through the different means. So net zero target for second half of the century, write down. Net zero target for second half of the century. Next point. While the Paris Agreement does not set the specific date, while the Paris Agreement does not set a specific date for achieving it, Next point. It sets a target to reach net zero emission by second half of 21st century. By second half of 21st century. Okay, you can just go through all the initiatives that we have done so far. And if you have any doubts, just let me know. I'm giving you some time to go through all of this because I have already given out of it. देखिए ज्यादातर क्वेश्चंस जो आएंगे वो आपके you have to understand जब तक आप बेस नहीं समझेंगे आपको आगे के भी टॉप नहीं समझ आएंगे because relation ही वहां से है. अगर मैं ग्लोबल स्टॉक टेक की बात करती हूँ आपको पता ही नहीं ग्लोबल स्टॉक टेक कहाँ है कहाँ से रिजुलेशन हुआ था and it will be written somewhere that Paris Agreement global stock take estimation was done in COP30. आपको COP30 पता है बाकी का आगे कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है so there is no point क्यों बिकॉज हमने पीछे का बैकग्राउंड नहीं पढ़ा इसलिए इंपॉर्टेंट है कि आप बैकग्राउंड वाइज मतलब कॉप बाय कॉप स्टडी करें तब जाके आपको रीसेंट कॉप समझ में आएंगे कॉप 27 कॉप 28 कॉप 29 कॉप 30 ये सब आपको तभी समझ आएंगे जब आपने पीछे का बैकग्राउंड समझा होगा अदरवाइज आपके लिए क्या है एक सिर्फ एक फैक्ट है और आपको उसको बदल करना है there is no point कि आपने उसका आपको जेनेसिस को देखना पड़ेगा ना from where it has been originated and how and why all of this has to be answered then only you will be able to understand today's scenario or link kar payenge you better link the things you better understand the things when you have the background of it you right you understand in a more deeper level right so the point is why I am taking bit by bit because आपको पता होना चाहिए लॉस एंड डैमेज का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है कहाँ से आया फिर कहाँ पे आर्टिकल में मेंशन हुआ देन फाइनलाइज कहाँ पर हुआ ठीक है ओके जस्ट गो थ्रू ऑल ऑफ इट एंड देन वी विल डिस्कस Write down the question. What do you understand by the global stock take? What do you understand by global stock take? Write down some of the assignment questions, Vicky. What do you understand by? Global stock take. Discussed in Paris Agreement. Next. Also mention its development. In top 30. Okay. अब इतना पार्ट तो खुद कर लेंगे this one. ये top 30 वाला पार्ट में just give it for tomorrow. Okay. At least do this one first. Next question is like question number 2. Discuss national determined contribution. National determined contribution. Of India and SS its impact on and discuss its utility in achieving Paris Agreement. Now, these are the 2 assignment questions that you have to do. Done? Okay. Write down our key initiatives and COP28. We'll discuss about some of the key initiatives at COP28. Write about key initiatives at COP28. Right. First initiative became mission innovation. Mission innovation. First became mission innovation. Right. Mission innovation. Mission innovation is a global initiative. Mission innovation is a global initiative catalyzing a decade of action and investment in decade of action and investment in research, development, and demonstrations to make clean energy affordable, attractive, and accessible for all. Next लिखेंगे International Solar Alliance, ISA. International Solar Alliance. Right on. ISA is a collaborative initiative. ISA is a collaborative initiative between India and France. Between India and France, aimed at uniting efforts to combat climate change. Next is breakthrough energy coalition. Breakthrough energy coalition. It is a coalition led by Bill Gates. It's a coalition led by Bill Gates and other private investors aimed at funding emerging clean energy technology. Then there is another deal which happened in the Paris Agreement. We called it with the name of European Green Deal. One of the very prominent events that happened in the COP15. Right now, European Commission has adopted the set of proposals. To make EU's climate, energy, transport. The European Commission has adopted the set of proposals to make EU's climate, energy, transport, and taxation policies fit for reducing net greenhouse gases by at least 55% by 2030. Right? Okay, now come to the next part. Now we start discussing about the different COPs. Okay? COP26 से अब हमारी COP15 डिस्कस हो गया. COP21 डिस्कस हो गया 2015. From COP21, next COP which is more important in 26, and then till COP30 we will discuss. Okay? All of which is important. So first we discuss is about COP26. Right now, COP26 held in Glasgow. It was held in Glasgow. Okay, very important point in Glasgow which happened in COP26. They talked about punch method. Who talked about it? PM Modi has talked about it, punch. So wherein they have discussed that what they can do, the 5 key principles, 5 key outcomes have come. What he said for the betterment of the country, right? In the country in sense, in what context he has talked about the environmental pollution, pollutants, greenhouse gases, how it can be mitigated. So first, building so first we're starting up the introduction with the key outcomes. पहला था Glasgow Break Agenda. What was that? It has been approved by 42 countries. Glasgow Break Agenda has been approved by 42 countries. Glasgow Break Agenda has been approved by 42 countries, including India. including India. It focuses on collaborative efforts. It focuses on collaborative efforts. It focuses on collaborative efforts to accelerate the development, and deployment of clean solutions, clean technology and solutions. Next point, parties established mitigation work program. Next point, parties established mitigation work program. It is one of the very important initiatives. They started mitigation work program. What was mitigation work program? At COP26. They established mitigation work program at COP26. Next, Global Forest Pledge. Global Forest Pledge. What is the Global Forest Pledge, Nikhil? Global Forest Pledge, Nikhil. 137 countries committed to halting. 137 countries committed to halting and reversing deforestation. They committed to halting and reversing deforestation by 2030. By 2030. The pledge is backed by $19 billion. It is pledged by $19 billion in public and private finance. It is pledged by $19 billion in public and private finance. Who all will be supporting them all, private and public finance both. Okay. Next, we can Global Methane Pledge. Even in COP27 also, when COP27 बात करेंगे, then 28 also Global Methane Pledge has been again talked. Right. So when you're discussing it further, it becomes important to talk about when and how it was first initiated. So write down Global Methane Pledge was launched at COP26 by European Union. Global methane. I hope you understand what should be the purpose from the topic itself. It's a global methane pledge. We have talked about the methane release. How it started, European Union along with USA. They talked about it first, right? Nikhil? Global Methane Pledge launched at COP26 by European Union and United States, who have joined by many countries, Write down. Global Methane Pledge decided to reduce methane emission at least 30% by 2030. At least 30% by 2030. Compared to the levels of 2020. Madam, India is not a signatory to Global Methane Pledge. India is not a signatory to it. India is not a part of it. Please remember this is important for the preliminary policy. India is not the part of global methane pledge. Right? India is not the part of global methane pledge. Write down. Article 6 of Paris Agreement. What was Article 6 of Paris Agreement? Just look at it. Again, carbon markets. So that these were also talked about. Write down. Article 6 of Paris Agreement. Carbon markets and voluntary international corporation. Article 6 of Article 6 of Paris Agreement. Carbon markets and voluntary international corporation. लिखिए. Parties agreed to the carryover of the carbon credits. देखिए, जो क्योटो प्रोटोकॉल में आपका जनरेट हुआ था, whatever carbon credits which were generated, so they decided upon that which were generated in here protocol which will be carried out in COP21 means Paris Agreement में उन्होंने क्या कर दिया, कैरी फॉरवर्ड कर दिया. मतलब ये जो कार्बन फॉर एग्जांपल जस्ट लाइक दैट आपके एक अकाउंट में डाल दिया और आप एक बैंक में अकाउंट है आपका एंड देयर यू हैव केप्ट सम कॉर्पस, फिर आपने किसी और बैंक में भी रखा है, राइट. द मोमेंट यू आर कंबाइनिंग बोथ, एक तरीके से आप क्या करें, दोनों का एक का जो फंड है आप वहां से निकाल के किसी और बैंक में डाल दें. दिस कैन बी डन वेरी इजीली. कर सकते हैं आप लोग. एक बैंक में जो बैंक का जो अमाउंट है आप दूसरे बैंक में डाल रहे हैं एंड व्हिच कैन बी डन. So this is just like that. कि क्योटो प्रोटोकॉल में जो कार्बन क्रेडिट्स आपके अचीव हुए थे उसी को आपको कहाँ आप मिला रहे हैं, पेरिस एग्रीमेंट क्रेडिट्स. दैट्स इट. इसका सिंपल सा मतलब ये है. राइट डाउन. आर्टिकल 6 ऑफ पेरिस एग्रीमेंट क्या कहता है, कार्बन मार्केट्स एंड वॉलंटरी इंटरनेशनल कॉर्पोरेशन. उसका फर्स्ट पार्ट है, लिखिए. पार्टीज अग्री टू द carryover of carbon credits generated under Kyoto Protocol since 2013, bringing up to 320 metric tons of CO2 equivalent, bringing up to 320 metric tons of CO2 equivalent into Paris Agreement. Last, we'll talk about only one thing which has been discussed by the Prime Minister Modi. He has discussed about the lifestyle in the Glasgow. We attended that meeting. He has talked about the Punch Mitra also. So we'll discuss about that only. Okay, so write down COP26 summit in Glasgow and India. COP26 summit in Glasgow and India. What was the India's contribution in that meeting? Prime Minister Modi, stating that India contributes only 5% of global greenhouse gas. India contributes only 5% of global greenhouse gas emissions, while representing about 70% of world's population, presented India's Panch Mitra. He presented India's Panchamitra. So he presented India's Panchamitra. Write down, which means 5 commitments. इसका मतलब है 5 commitments या 5-fold strategy. Anything you can write. It means 5 commitments or 5-fold strategy. First, what he talked about, Ricky. India will take its non-fossil energy. India will take its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt. it will take its capacity, non-pulses capacity to 500 gigawatt by 2030. Second, India will meet its 50% of its energy requirement. India will meet its 50% of energy requirement from renewable energy by 2030. Third, reduce 1 billion tons of carbon emission. Reduce 1 billion tons of carbon emission by 2030. Reduce 1 billion tons of carbon emission by 2030. Fourth, carbon intensity would be reduced to less than 45%. Carbon intensity would be reduced to less than 45% by 2030. Carbon intensity would be reduced to less than 45% by 2030. And the fifth one was by the year 2070, India will achieve the target of, by the year 2070, India will achieve the target of net zero. Next, write down. Prime Minister also emphasized the importance of life. LIFE. What is the full form of life that he has given? Lifestyle for environment. Lifestyle for environment. Comma, a movement urging the world. It was a movement urging the world to adapt sustainable living in various sectors like agriculture, packaging, water management, fashion. India also called upon developed countries to provide climate finance. India also called upon developed countries to provide the climate finance of $1 trillion at the earliest. Okay. The last one is Glasgow Financial. You can just write down just like this, Glasgow Financial Alliance. I'll explain you, don't write under this. I'll just explain you what is that Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. Basically, it was also launched in 26 only, COP26, in particularly with the Race to Zero campaign. Basically, what is the purpose is to add in leading in financial institutions, right? Whenever we need something, we need the investment for it, we need the funding for it. So we need the financial institution also. So this was added up, Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. It was added up, and this was important because it created a kind of financial institution needed for the fulfillment of the commitments that we have taken up in the Glasgow COP26. Right? The only purpose of this was to create an extra institution so that we can, whenever we want, we can take the fund required for fulfilling all the commitments that has been given to us. Okay. Anything that you have to ask in this, please let me know. In any topic, in any question, anything you need to ask, just go through this whole thing. Tomorrow we'll discuss more about COP27, COP26, COP27, COP28, COP29 and 30. These are important because questions from here can definitely come. They can ask about any pledge, they can ask about anything. So don't take it very lightly. It's current affairs. COP26 से लेकर 2015 is important. COP26 is important. 26 why it is important? Because again, whenever you have to, again I'm saying that although question is being asked in 27, 28, but you need to know because all are linked. 27, 20, 29 and 30 all are important. Just revise all the points and let me know if you have any doubt. Yes, class ईशान सौम्य बताइए. आप बताइए. Yes. See clear. Good. I'll also tell you prelims के लिए काफी important रहता है इसमें. जितना भी हमने pledge किया है, right? जितने भी pledges हैं इसके अंदर. So all the small details are going to be important. They will just change the statement and they will ask. From the last 3 to 4 years, UNSCC topic has become extremely important. UNSCC has become so important that every year they will ask. At least 2-3 questions आपके यहाँ से climate से रहते हैं. So do not take this topic very lightly. Prelims में भी और आपका mains में भी. And optional में तो definitely. So I'm telling you again and again why, because climate से बहुत बार questions रहे हैं. Whole paper इनका 2022 का पूरा climate ही था. UNSCC questions say this goal, that goal, this institution, that institution, they have been asked of it. So please do not take it lightly. Try to complete it. And also with respect to the question which have been given to you, try to understand. Take it as an assignment question. Try to understand. Write down just आपको structuring में दिया गया है और conclusion जिस हिसाब से देखिए. थोड़ा सा फिगर्स को ध्यान में रखकर, जैसे आपका डॉलर कितना 300 बिलियन की बात हुई है, 100 की बात हुई है, डॉलर 700 मिलियन की बात हुई है. You should remember that. It gives an impact. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.